Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Krista Harmon. I am one of the career readiness consultants at the Kent Intermediate School District, and I welcome you to today's Talk and Tour career series where we are hosting Atomic Object as our guest, and we're going to talk software and all sorts of cool jobs behind the scenes that young people may not know about. And so we're glad you're here today. So to get us started, I wanted to introduce Jesse Hill and Jory Galba, and they're going to introduce themselves and just start off. We're gonna start with you, Jesse. I'd love for you to share what the term accelerator manager means, and then how long you've been with Atomic Object, and then Jory will be your turn, and then I'm gonna loop back with my first question. So welcome, Jesse. So glad you're here today.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited to be here, and thank you for having us. So I'm Jesse Hill, and I've been with Atomic for about 8.5 years. I worked at IBM for about 15 years prior to that as a developer, and I joined Atomic as a developer and was in that role for about 4 years prior to switching to the role I have now. And it's a great question. I don't know of too many other accelerator managers, so it's not a title that's familiar to people, but essentially Atomic has an accelerator program that we offer to people who are joining our company right out of college. And it's a 2-year program that's a regular full-time job as a software developer, but it involves just extra resources and help from the company to help people get off to a great start in their career. So my job is recruiting and interviewing for folks to join this program, and then running it for folks who have joined the company.
That's great, Jesse. And we look forward to digging into some of those different positions you've had along the way to where you are currently. So thanks for being here. Jory, so nice to meet you. Go ahead and tell us what your role is and how long you've been with Atomic Object.
Sure. Yeah, just to echo Jesse, thanks again for having us. Super excited to be here and kind of talk about some of the things that are going on. So yeah, my name is Jory Galba. I just graduated from Hope College with a bachelor's in computer science and global studies. So I am into about my 6th month in the accelerator program, and as a professional software developer and consultant.
That's so great. So thanks for being here. My first question to you, because I know teenagers like to know, like, what were you thinking back in high school? And is this what you thought you'd do? So starting with you, Jesse, let's go back to that high school age. Did you think you were going to go into computers? Kind of give us a quick kind of career path of how you've landed to where you are.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was just a genius when it came to English literature. I found out in college that was not true. not a strong area for me, but in high school it was something I enjoyed. I really loved history, and I still do. So that was an interest of mine going into college. I didn't think either of those would naturally lead me to a great career path. And I had enjoyed computer science classes in high school when I had the opportunity. I was fortunate that my family always had computers in the house from when I was really young. So I just had a familiarity and enjoyed the puzzle solving aspect of programming. So I started out in college as a computer science major and really enjoyed it. And so, yeah, it's mostly worked out kind of according to plan. The accelerator manager thing was a bit of a surprise, but yeah, I knew, I would say, by the time I was a junior in high school that I had an interest in programming and wanted to do it as a career.
That's great. That's nice. Not everyone has that. And so how about you, Jory? When you look back at, it's not too long ago for you, but for your high school, was computer something you always thought you'd go into?
No, definitely not. I was always kind of interested in a lot of different subjects. So at one point I thought that I would major in psychology or communications. I had thought about political science at one point. I was kind of all over the place by the time that I graduated high school. And I went to Hope kind of thinking that I would do graphic design because I had always been really interested in kind of communication and marketing and writing. And long story short, I ended up in 2 introductory computer science classes at Hope and totally fell in love with it. I just really liked the problem solving aspect of it and kind of using my words in my writing to creatively solve really unique problems and challenges that people had. And so I was really fortunate to have those classes my first semester of freshman year, because after that, I just declared a computer science major. Haven't looked back since, totally love it. So
That's great. And so what I hear is both of you had some different interests, history being for you, Jesse, and for you, Jory, communication, psychology, graphic design. And so I think for young people to understand that we're whole people, we have lots of interests. And so it's fun to explore what options are out there. And I love that for you, Jory, a couple classes and even Jesse, your natural interest led to this. For young people, I hope you're hearing that problem solving is a big piece of this. We're going to definitely talk more about qualities of what makes a good person in this field. But so Jesse, let's go back to you. When you first graduated, you went off to college, you got your degree in computer science. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about that kind of coursework, and were internships important to you? What should young people know about kind of that education path?
Yeah. Well, internships are very important. Future employers will want to see that you've spent your summers well. And so they'll want to see that you had the interest to practice what you were learning in your coursework in a real work setting, and that you got the experience of 40 hours a week working with a team on a larger code base than usually you'll find in a regular college class. That being said, we really feel that a computer science degree is very important. You learn all the fundamentals during that coursework that you might not learn just writing a mobile application or writing a web application. So we really like to see both. And what you'll typically see in a computer science degree is, just sort of an introduction to programming and what it's like in a sense of how it all works. But then you'll learn about operating systems, you'll learn about networking, you'll learn about databases, you'll learn a lot of the fundamental information that you need to know to be an effective programmer. And then internships are really great at kind of giving you a view into what that looks like day to day, and giving you a view into a different company culture, but also the opportunity to work with modern tools and learn from a team of experienced developers. And that can be a really nice complement to what you learn in a college degree.
So it sounds like those core skills are really important, and then those internships help you kind of start to apply it in a real practical way and start to develop some skills and understand kind of the lay of the land. Jory, what would you like to share about your education experience, and what would you want the young people to know about that season?
Yeah, I think that because I didn't know that I was going into computer science when I graduated high school, I ended up picking Hope College, for other reasons. And I think that one of the main things that really kind of stood out to me when I was looking for internships while I was in undergrad was that some of the bigger companies sounded really intriguing, and, I want to do an internship at, Google or Microsoft or, wherever. That just sounded really interesting to me. But I think that what I found was that some of the bigger companies, they're recruiting typically from bigger colleges. And so I think that had I known, that I was going into computer science or the kind of company that I, wanted to be at, I think that might have informed like where I would have gone to college. Fortunately, I didn't want to be at a, super big company. I picked Atomic because I really loved the culture and I really loved the size of the company. But I think that if, you're really interested in computer science, maybe reflecting on like what kind of company you might want to go to could inform how you decide to, go to college and what program you apply to.
How would young people even start to figure that out, Jory, from your experience?
Yeah, I think just kind of asking around, like when I was, looking for internships at bigger company, I was like a sophomore in high school and was very naive about like kind of the process. And it took kind of talking with, professors and other professionals in the industry to kind of like know, oh, okay, this is this is kind of how this works. And so I think that if you are interested in computer science or you think that it's something that you might want to study, I think kind of reflecting on, whether or not you want to pursue a bigger company or a smaller company or something like consulting or, working at a company that's solely doing computer science and software development is something that would probably be really beneficial if you see yourself as being pretty serious about exploring this.
That's really helpful. And I guess I want young people to hear, you don't have to have this all figured out ahead of time. And so as Jory was saying, and even Jesse's nodding his head, you ask questions, it's called networking. You start to find out, how is this? How does this work? Because you would know. Now, Jesse, did your school help you identify those internship spots? Because I know kids want to like, how do I find the internship? So do most colleges help kind of link students with those companies, or is it something students have to do all on their own? Jesse, we'll start with you, and then Jory, you can add in.
Yeah, most colleges will have a career services department that is pretty helpful in bringing employers to campus and making those opportunities available to students. Some schools will actually require an internship as part of your CS degree to graduate. So you don't even have a choice in the matter, you just have to get one. I found that when I was at Calvin, I don't remember the program making a big point of internships. Maybe it's because it was so long ago, but my professor in one of my classes invited someone to come and give a talk to the whole group, and I was interested in what he had to say and ended up interviewing and got an internship that way.
That's great. So it sounds like the college at least helps make those connections with even guest speakers or helps facilitate that. What about you, Jory? Anything you want to help the young people understand about that process?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I found really helpful. At Hope, they were really willing to kind of work with us and give us connections to internships and to companies. I actually heard about Atomic through Hope and several of the talks that they gave there. So that was really helpful. But I do wish, like I was talking about my sophomore year, I kind of decided to like try to do things on my own and explore some different options. And I really wish that I would have talked to professionals with experience and that sort of thing a little bit sooner. So that would be my one piece of advice, would be to, really talk to other people who have either gone through the internship process or, are really aware of what's going on in the industry.
Yeah, and I love that the young people who are here today are taking advantage of this opportunity, because this is how they start to get those pieces and parts of this journey to start to understand how it all works. We're definitely going to come back and talk about culture, because you both have mentioned that. So I want young people to understand what that culture word means. But I know some of them are really anxious even to get into some of the nuts and bolts of what you guys actually do. So Jesse, let's take you back to some of those early careers, like even with IBM. Tell us some of the different kind of programming and help young people understand like the different titles that are around too, because sometimes we get stuck on like just computer programmers, but there's other titles that they might not be aware of. Hi, cutie. That's the joy of Zoom work, right? Have our kids pop in.
I apologize, I was a bit distracted there. Could you give me the question one more time, please?
No, that's no problem. I was just having you go back to what some of those first job titles that you had and what some of the core work that you did at IBM, for example.
Yeah, so my initial title was just, I was a software developer, and the work I did early on really focused around virtual machines, which are a thing that's a little difficult to explain to folks without a technical background. But it was essentially work to allow programs to run on lots of different types of machines. So on, phones, on things that aren't traditional computers. We see a lot of that today. Back when I started, it was unusual. So
you're innovative. You're at the innovation time.
Yeah. I moved from that to doing more kind of libraries for other programmers to use. So graphical libraries to have menus and windows and things like that on screen. And then I ended up doing a lot of mobile applications before coming to Atomic.
So again, you were part of that cutting edge. What is a graphic library? What does that even mean? Maybe I'm just not a techie. Maybe the young people already know what that means.
Yeah, so what a graphics library does is provides tools for programmers to interact with the user. So, windows, buttons, menus, all those kinds of things that you might build a program's like look and feel out of. And also, low-level support for drawing images, drawing lines, drawing curves, those kinds of like rendering operations that you might use to draw a game or something like that.
Yeah, so I guess that's interesting for me as a career person, just to hear that that's somebody's job, that each developer doesn't handle all that themselves, that there's a team of people offering different parts and pieces to that. What would you like to share, Jory, about your job? I know you're just 6 months into it, good for you. But what are you doing already? What would you like the young people to know?
Yeah, so what really drew me to consulting and what I really love about Atomic is that it gives me an opportunity to kind of explore these different fields that I might not normally explore. So right now I'm working on a project where we're building a mobile application, and it kind of has to do with like holistic health. And that's been really, really interesting because it's not something that I would have normally had the opportunity to explore on my own. And as I mentioned before, in high school, I felt like I had all of these different kind of sparse interests. And so consulting has been a really good opportunity for me to kind of like flesh out, these different interests and learn a bunch about all of these different fields. So that's been really great. I think, kind of day to day, a lot of what I do is just kind of coding like different features. So our client has needs and they kind of articulate those needs. And then for each of those needs, we have to figure out, okay, how are we going to, build the code that actually does the thing? So that's kind of what I do day to day. And then because of the consulting aspect of it, I also get some interaction with clients. So it's not like I'm just like sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day, typing software. I really get to interact with a lot of people throughout the day, which I really like. I'm definitely, not quite the kind of person that like really enjoys just like sitting down, heads down, coding all day. So for me, consulting has been a really good option. Yeah.
I think that's such an important thing to put out on the table because there's a lot of just myths around what computer, software developers do, that they sit in a room by themselves, and code all day. So I love that you got that out there, that there's that client interaction. Jesse, what else would you like to share about what the day-to-day, maybe some of those myths that young people need to be aware of, that that's just not true, or some of the other job titles too that support you guys?
Yeah, I think a myth that I run into a lot is that if you pick the right type of problem to work with, you'll really enjoy your career. So if you discover that you really like front-end development or back-end development or artificial intelligence, and while those things are all good to think about, my experience is that the people you work with matter so much more than the type of problem that you're working on. And they have much bigger impact on your day-to-day enjoyment of the work in your career. So I would say to anyone considering a job in software, like think about the team you want to work with and the way that they work together, more so than the particular technology that they might be working in. It'll be a bigger factor determining whether you really enjoy that job and want to be there and spend your 40 hours a week there. It'll be a much bigger factor than the particular type of problem that they're working on.
I've heard that just from some of the other things I've done with you, Jesse, in Atomic Object, but those relationships are so important. I love that. So Jory, what the students would love to know, like kind of proportionately, how much time do you spend coding versus maybe with your clients or some of the other responsibilities you have?
I would say it definitely varies kind of week by week. I've had certain weeks where I might spend more time in meetings or talking with clients or even just talking, on the general team. This is a fairly big project that I'm currently working on. Whereas I have, other days or other weeks where it's more coding. So I think it's pretty variable. I would say probably 75% of my time, probably a little bit more than that, is spent, really kind of focused and heads down and in the code. And maybe, 15% of it is kind of interacting with the team and with clients and that sort of thing. I don't know, Jesse, if you want to kind of speak to that as well, if that's pretty, typical, but.
Just one note there is that at Atomic, we really like to do pair programming. So when you're programming and your head's down, it's usually with another person, not by yourself. So we really rely on that to help people who are new to the team learn, to share ideas between team members, to be a way to communicate, and just a way to get to know each other better. We feel that we produce better work when it's, two folks working together to solve a problem than someone on their own having to deal with the challenge.
Yeah, why don't students, I want you guys put in the chat if you like bouncing ideas off people. Does that sound something that would be good for you? Or do you like being by yourself? So you can put team or by myself. I'd love to know kind of what you guys think to that. Because that certainly is, like I said, one of those myths about programming, that you're by yourself all the time. So I love the idea of pair programming. So students, you can use that term when you're starting to do some informational interviewing, if that's something other companies do. Because if you like the idea of doing that with somebody else and bouncing ideas off of, that might be really great for you. Young people might also want to know, and we'll start with you, Jory, did you know all the programming languages when you got out of college that you're using now, or is this something you learned on the job? Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. I actually So the technologies that we're using for this particular project, I was really unfamiliar with pretty much all of them when I first started the project. I had kind of there's a couple languages that I'm using that kind of extend from certain base languages that I had experience with. But really, for the most part, a lot of it was very new. And what I really appreciate about Atomic is that they kind of, build in this time. And with pair programming, I mean, I feel like I'm learning constantly, which is really great. I'm getting like paid to learn, which is great. So yeah, the thing about computer science, I think that can sometimes be a little challenging is that there's so much to learn, and it can feel kind of complex and a little nebulous. But I think that demystifying like having to learn everything, and there's this like myth that you just have to like know all the pieces or all the languages. I think that's just not at all true. And I really appreciate that I'm at a company that really values learning and being able to kind of do that like as you go. So no, I definitely didn't know everything from all the languages.
Well, yeah, and I think for young people, I've heard this from other students that like, how will I know how to do that? They get worried about, they see these adults talk about their jobs. Well, how will I know how to do that? And I guess I just want to remind young people that you learn along the way. So you'll get hired, you'll have your base knowledge. Even for nursing, you learn your base knowledge, but then when you're on the floor, you learn so much more. And I know, Jesse, you kind of alluded to that too. What would you like to share as far as some of the information about having to know all the languages up front, and maybe even help? So I'll start with that, and then I have another follow-up.
Yeah, I think there are companies who aren't very good learning environments and expect you to come in kind of with a skill set to get the job done. And then there are others who expect you to be learning all day, every day. And I'm happy to be at a company that's more on that second side of it because I like that. I think it's fun. It keeps the job interesting to me. And in my mind, it'd be really sad to know all the things when I was 22 to get me through a whole career, because that's a really boring career in my mind. So I'm really glad that it is an active part of the job. And the way Atomic looks at it is that learning is the key skill that we care about, your ability and enthusiasm for learning. And that's what is most important to us, because the languages that we're working in now are not the ones that we were working in 3 years ago. They're not the ones that we'll probably be working in 3 years from now. So it's always changing. And I guess one piece of encouragement I have for everybody is that each language you learn makes the next one that much easier. Each framework you learn makes the next one that much easier. So I wouldn't worry too much about picking the correct one or the most important one. They're all helpful, and the things you learn in one will largely carry over to another. So if you are able to pick anything up, it'll help you learn the next thing and the next thing after that. It gets easier all the time. The first language is really difficult. Second one is not as bad. By the third one, you're starting to like get the hang of it, and they can come pretty quickly.
Yeah, I see you're nodding your head, Jory. That's probably been true for you.
Oh, definitely, for sure, yeah.
I think that's a hot tip for the day. I mean, for young people to know that you're going to learn something, but you're going to consistently learn. And like you said, that sounds like an exciting part of your job, to always keep learning and innovating and just seeing what's new that's out there. It's an exciting part of your field. I'd like to go into a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of some of your projects and help young people understand what other roles you work with to make a project come to fruition, so they have a sense of some of the other job titles too that make somewhere like Atomic Object run. So Jesse, let's start with you. What are one of the projects? I know you're an accelerator manager. I'm not sure how much you are the day-to-day of the development, but what would you like the young people to know about what makes up the teams and what makes up your staff?
Yeah, so most of our company works in one of three roles. So either a software consultant and developer doing a wide range of tasks, or a software consultant and designer. And our designers are more focused on really like understanding problems deeply and thinking through a range of possible solutions and coming up with approaches that are easy for people to learn and match, the work that they really care the most about, match those flows well. So software designers are a big part of the company. And then the third role that we have on most teams is what we call our delivery leads. And they really focus on helping clients get the most out of engaging with our team. you can think about it as product owner role where they're helping the client really think through what the product should be, what the priorities for the product should be, and then thinking through the planning. So project management type stuff. Those three roles make up most of our company, and then everyone else is kind of there in a support role. So we have managing partners in our office, and they bring work into the company. So they're working primarily with clients to see if we can be a good partner, and if there's a good opportunity to work together. We have a very small IT department, a very small marketing department. So there are a lot of roles, but the primary ones for us are developers, designers, and delivery leads.
Delivery leads, that's awesome. Because again, those managing partners, someone has to be bringing in the business. So there's that whole sales component. So I guess I just want young people to know, if you like computers, there's many different options for you, even just within a small company like Atomic Objects.
Yeah, and our developers often grow into some of those other roles. So you might start at Atomic as a developer, end up as a managing partner, and be a CEO. Both of our CEOs now started as developers at the company.
Yeah, that's so important for the teenagers to hear, is that you come in and you continue to develop and move around, because even the delivery leads, they probably didn't come out of college to be a delivery lead. That's not how it works.
Right.
So you mentioned, Jory, you're working on a holistic health project right now. What would you like the young people to know about some of the projects that you've worked on? And like you said, about 75% of your time is kind of coding. What might a typical project look for you like over time? Like, is it a 6-month project? Is it a year project? Just some of the kind of ins and outs of what that might look like.
Yeah, so I have been working on this project pretty much since I started at Atomic, and it really depends on the project, how much time you might be on it and what you might be doing on it. I am part of the accelerator program, and one of my colleagues has worked on like 3 different projects since starting. So, I've been doing the same one for 5 months, and he's had all sorts of stuff in the last 5 months. So it really varies and depends based on the project. This one is probably a longer term project. So Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe some of our longer ones are like 2, sometimes 3 years. And yeah, the shorter ones can last like, a month? So it really depends. And does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm a person who really likes immediate feedback. So, and not that a long project wouldn't be okay, but sometimes we have to do some of that self-assessment of how we roll, right? And what's going to meet our needs. And some people love being project-based, where it's just something changing all the time. Some people like to do the same thing over the same thing day in, day out, and for years and years. So I think that's part for young people to start to, what do I like? Do I like that idea of doing different projects and completing a task and moving on to the next one? So that there's different roles that contribute at different levels, for sure. Let's talk about culture, because you guys mentioned this, and I just know when I visited Atomic Object, there does seem to be a wonderful feeling there as far as what it's like to work there. There was lots of food. That's kind of an area of your actual physical environment. So Jesse, let's start with you. What do you like about the culture? What does that word culture mean, so young people understand, so they can pursue something neat for themselves?
I think unfortunately means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Sometimes I like to think about it as, what can you expect from your teammates? Like, what interactions can you expect? Another angle I like to think through is what gets you promoted in a company. I think that can sometimes bring out the real values that the company has. So we're a very collaborative culture. We have small teams where everyone sits together. We really expect to help each other learn and grow and get work done together. And I really like that. I really like being able to bring my strengths to a team and leverage other people's abilities to really come up with better solutions than we could on our own. So we're very much a culture of getting to know people well, really caring about people's lives outside of work. And that helps us be open and vulnerable with each other to express that we don't know a thing or that we could use some help on a problem. I think that's really important to our success. And then as far as what the company really looks for is people who who care a lot about their team, about helping their client be successful, people who can manage their time well, people who can be trusted to take a problem through to success or reach out for help, when they need it. And so we're low management culture, I would say. We don't have managers that are going to check in with you every day to make sure that you're on track. We're going to trust that you are until you say otherwise. And we care very much about those in-person relationships. So we really want small offices, not big ones, because we know that those relationships can start to break down when a company's individual offices really grow. And we really like to meet in person with our clients. We like that face-to-face communication. We like our teams to sit together so that, that lowers the barrier to asking questions or just, being around your team and understanding what they care about or what they're struggling with, that kind of stuff.
It sounds really important, like you say, for trust. So if you're working in these pairs or bringing a project to fruition, that you trust each other and can, like you say, hey, I don't have this, I don't know what to do here. And you can be safe with each other. I love that. That's a beautiful thing. And like you say, probably can't happen at all sizes of companies. Jory, what's this been like for you? And how would you describe the culture and what you like about it?
Yeah, the last 6 months have been a lot of learning. I think, technically and personally and relationally, it's all been really, really great. And I think part of that is due to Atomic's culture of just like teaching and learning. We've got a very open culture and a very honest culture. I feel like I can be really transparent with my coworkers. And I think that that's really important. It's something that was really attractive to me about Atomic. And I think that, Atomic is unique and that it's very, it's full of very passionate people. A lot of people really care about the work and they care about each other. And so I think that that's made some of the day-to-day pain of, different bugs or client issues or, whatever, a lot better. And I just really feel like I'm working on a team and with a company that really has my back. And that's part of the reason why I was kind of seeking out smaller companies and consultancies. I think that there's definitely larger companies where that kind of a culture, happens and you can create that kind of culture. But when I interviewed with Atomic, it was just really clear that part of that was due to kind of the small nature and yeah, like Jesse mentioned, the smaller offices. So.
Yeah, one of the students has a question that kind of was going to go into my next question, really like, how do you maintain that culture with being virtual now when you're used to, having snacks in the afternoon together in a central location? And then one of the students wants to know specifically, Jory, like, how was it for you to actually start a company during COVID? So why don't you address how it's been for you? And then maybe Jesse, you'll have a more historical sense of how it's changed.
Sure.
Jory hasn't known the pre-COVID environment. So what about for you, Jory? What's it been like?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that one of the things that really surprised me about Atomic and one of the benefits that I might not have seen in the interview process was that they were able to transition so quickly to remote work. And because we are a consultancy, we're not limited to one specific industry. So we could really have clients all over, even when things were really, sketchy during the pandemic. We didn't really know economically how things were going to be. And so I think that was a big benefit, was just the security that I was going to be able to have work. And in terms of online and remote working, it's definitely been a challenge for sure. But I think that Atomic has really, risen to the occasion, and they've provided a lot of opportunities for me to get to know people. We do virtual pair lunches. So the company actually pays us to have lunch with each other for a half hour, which has been really fun just to get to know people. But yeah, it can be challenging to get to know people on kind of a deeper level through a Zoom call. And it's hard to, with the pandemic, just trying to, reach out to people depending on their comfort level of being in person. So, but yeah, I think that in general, remote working has been challenging, but there's definitely been, positives and negatives to it. And Atomic has really provided an opportunity to kind of make those connections for the newer people.
Yeah, I love that intentionality for sure. How about you, Jesse? What would you like to help kids understand, like the pre and post of working in this kind of field remotely?
I think it's been a really difficult year, and we have a company where we are fortunate to have really strong relationships, and that's carrying us a little bit. But I feel like those drift when you don't see people, when you don't interact day to day. So we're on Zoom a lot on calls like this one. So we do heavily leverage like video calls. We use other tools like Discord, which is more for gamers, but it's just a way to stay connected. So we're often connected to people remotely. But what I find is that most of the relationship building happens in between work. It happens when you're grabbing a snack, when you're grabbing a cup of coffee, when you're going out to lunch, maybe after work, going for a bike ride together, stuff like that. And those things largely don't happen in remote context because people get Zoom fatigue, where they have to be on video calls to get work done. And as soon as the work is done, they don't want any more. And so we've tried a lot of different experiments this year to try to encourage some of our social interaction that we're missing, but mostly people are tired and want to rest, at the end of the workday. So it's been difficult. We're really excited about some of the news around vaccines that we've been hearing, and we're really hopeful that we can get back together sooner rather than later. I know there are companies that always work remote and companies that have decided to be remote going forward. I think for our culture, it just doesn't work as well. And so we're looking forward to being back together.
Yeah, I'm a pretty social woman, and I'm definitely reaching my end point because, like you say, when we're on Zoom all day, even my extrovertness is like, yeah, I don't want to have a happy hour with my girlfriends on Zoom because I'm zoomed out. So yeah, I hear you. One of our students would love to know, each of you, what is your typical work week like in terms of hours? Does it tend to be kind of an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 type role? Do you find yourself working lots of overtime? Jesse, why don't we start with you, and then Jory, you can go next.
We are unusual in that we pay people hourly, which is really uncommon for the industry. We always have 40 hours of work for people to do, and we don't mind if it's a little heavy one week, a little light the next. We kind of look more at the average. So we have a lot of flexibility there. But one of the cool things about paying people hourly is we have great data and we can track it over time. And so we in our Grand Rapids office tend to always be in between 41.5 to 42 hours for the office overall is the time that people tend to work, which is interesting because if you work more, you get paid more. So you kind of think that people would want to work, maybe longer hours, but we tend to be right in that range. And we're able to do it, I think, partly because we've been doing the work that we have for so long that we're really good at knowing where we are in the course of a project, what we're likely to get done 3 months from now, 4 months from now, 5 months from now. So we don't have a lot of like late surprises where we're trying to, somehow pack a month of work into, just a couple days or a week's time. We tend to be much more steady, and that's great for our team and great for our clients because when people are working crazy hours, they're tired, they're grumpy, they're not doing their best work, they're not, paying the same kind of attention to detail that maybe they would if they were in better shape physically, and we want people to be really excited to come in every day and excited to be part of their team every day. And that doesn't happen when people are working crazy hours.
No, I love that you're really expressing a good work-life balance that so many people are searching for, that you're not working those 80-hour work weeks. Is that something that's been good for you, Jory, that there's some balance at your company?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think that too, it's pretty flexible with the company, which I really appreciate, especially online. I can start at 9 or I can start at 7, that's been really, really great. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. One of our young people wants to know, is this a field of work that there's jobs? Like, are people hiring in Grand Rapids for software development? Is this something that you have to go search outside of our area to get a job? Jesse, why don't you start, and then Jory, you can kind of share what you've been learning even in your own job search.
Yeah, I think it's one of the great things about this career is that there are jobs everywhere and more all the time. So it's a field where most companies, most of the time, complain that they can't fill the positions that they have. So that's good for you because it means that you have a lot of choices about who you want to work with and what kind of stuff you want to do and where you want to live. And it also generally means pretty good pay and pretty good benefits and nice environments to work in. So here in Grand Rapids, we have a lot of larger employers like Spectrum or Steelcase or Bissell or, admire a lot of larger companies like that have large IT departments that build a lot of software, and then a lot of smaller companies like ours too, where we might be consultancies or small application development companies. So there's a ton, and it's growing every year. I think that, you know, when I graduated from college, 22 years ago now, it was a little more limited, but you know, as Grand Rapids grows and as our economy changes, there are more options all the time. And that's one of my favorite things about software as a career, is that you can kind of pair it up with most hobbies or interests that you might have. So, you know, there aren't too many industries these days that don't need software to be successful. And so if you have a passion for, you know, healthcare, you can work in healthcare. If you have a passion for education, you can work in that field. I love cycling, and there are a lot of like cool, like cycling related software jobs now that are out there. I don't have one at the moment, but they're there that I could go after if I was interested in that kind of thing.
Well, I think that's such a great piece of advice to start to match up your interests with your career. If you're going to do software development, why not pick a company that maybe has a special interest? Absolutely. I think that's great. How about you, Jory? What would you like to share about some of the job search that you had gone through recently before you got this?
Yeah, I would definitely, you know, kind of echo what Jesse said. It was really, you know, nice to be able to kind of apply to different jobs that I could really see myself loving, and know that there were a lot of opportunities available. You know, I picked another major in global studies because I was really interested in kind of intercultural communication. And I feel like what I learned, you know, doing that major has really helped me be a better consultant. And so I think that you can really apply a lot of different interests to this particular field and get a lot of different opportunities in terms of like jobs and job searches. You know, I have a friend in the department who also studied Japanese, and he's hoping to be a software developer in Japan, you know, kind of in the business industry. So I definitely think that, you know, just to echo Jesse, you can really pair it with a lot of different things. So
that's exciting for sure. We're going to do a virtual tour of Atomic Object in a minute. Jesse's going to pull up a video to show you young people. Just one final question, and then we're going to end with a word of wisdom, Jory and Jesse, so you can think about what you want to give as far as a final word of wisdom. But one of the students, I guess, would love to know, you know, the majors in computer science versus computer engineering versus software engineering. Like, is that something that's somewhat interchangeable? Is there one that they should be pursuing that's more marketable than another? What would you like to share from your experience? We'll start with you, Jory.
Yeah, I definitely think that, at least, you know, from my perspective at Hope, we didn't really have like a differentiation between a like software engineering versus, you know, networking majors, you know, that sort of thing. It was all just kind of computer science, and it was pretty much software development. And so there definitely is a distinction between those. And I would recommend, you know, if you're maybe interested in data analysis versus software development, you know, if that's something that maybe one of those things sounds more interesting to you, I would definitely recommend kind of researching that, because there can be distinctions in jobs if you kind of study one over the other. Yeah, Jesse, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say one way to kind of think about it is to look at the kinds of companies that you might be interested in working with and the kinds of jobs that you might want to do there, and then see what they list in their job postings for what they're looking for. We mostly hire computer science students because the reasons why you might pick computer science are also tend to be the reasons why you might pick a company like Atomic. But we'll hire computer engineering students. Not so much electrical engineering. It tends to be different enough that it doesn't tend to be a good fit for us. But I would say it's a lot easier to transfer into a job like ours with an electrical engineering background than maybe, you know, global studies, for example, or something like that. So they're close, and you'll learn a lot with an electrical engineering major that might be interesting. Actually, what we find sometimes is that electrical engineers have to take some programming. Sometimes that's their favorite part of the electrical engineering major, and then they switch to computer science, and then we end up hiring those folks.
Yeah, I can see that happening for sure. So I think they had a great recommendation. Go to Indeed.com, you guys, plug in software developer, look at the job postings, and then look at those requirements. Start to see what companies are asking for as far as the types of majors. It's a great way to educate yourself about what companies that you think you might want to work for are looking for. So you're going to have a time for one more question, students. So if you have anything else before we finish up, but we do want to be done in about 10 minutes. So go ahead, Jesse. I think I made you co-host, so you should be able to share. And we'll finish off with that word of wisdom.
All right. So this is a kind of a 360-degree set of photos of our office building. This is Wealthy Street, and we're really happy to be in a neighborhood with a lot of great restaurants and bars and things like that, cool shops. And it's a residential area, so a lot of our folks have really short commutes and can walk to work or bike to work, or at least not sit on the highway in traffic, which is nice. This is our building. It's a 100-year-old building. It used to be an auto dealership at one point, and they parked their cars in front of these big windows. Anyway, we're glad to be part of a nice neighborhood and an historical building. And this building is, we expect it to be sort of a cap on our size in Grand Rapids. So we don't want to outgrow it. We want to be able to have a company size that fits in this building. This is our reception. This is Terry. She's a really great person and knows everybody in Grand Rapids, good person to know. This is sort of our welcome area at the front of the building. And it's nice. It's, people can grab a cup of coffee up here, have lunch up here. The whole office meets up here at 10 in the morning to share announcements, and we always have snacks out on the table over here. It's really nice too, because it's very open to the street and the community, and a lot of people walk up and down Wealthy Street and just know that we're here and get a little peek into our building. One of our office huskies is here. We have a couple dogs that are in the office, not every day, but a lot of days. And they add some levity, some fun to the office. Our workspace is a little further back. We have all open space, and the reason why we have that is because we really want it to be easy for people to sit next to each other to work together. And our teams vary in terms of size based on the client opportunity. So we like being able to move furniture around when a new team forms. That's actually me back there in the corner, working with a couple other folks. And one thing we really like about our space is having lots of natural light, especially in January, February. That ends up being a really nice feature of the office. The neon sign in the back is one of my son's favorite perks of the office. He also really likes the candy machine that's in the front. It's a little like candy machine. Anyway, let me pull up a typical conference room. We have a lot of client meetings, and we like to do them in person whenever possible. So we have a number of larger rooms like this where we have big whiteboard walls. There's no writing on this one, but you can use markers to write anywhere you want on this wall. And we're often discussing big ideas with clients and mapping out, what a product is going to look like, or what a couple months of work might look like. So we like having a lot of space for that. And we like having furniture, again, that we can move around in these rooms. Sometimes we'll set it up as more a classroom format or more of a workshop-y format with desks along the walls. We're fortunate that all of our conference rooms also have big windows, so we don't have to sit in a dark interior space for too long. And we really love working with local clients and having in-person meetings, but we'll have big video setups in all the conference rooms to be able to handle meetings with out-of-state clients. We do have a nice courtyard that sits in between our building and is loading a bit slowly. Our building and our company garage. This garage got a facelift. It looks nicer now than it did at the time of this recording, but it's nice having this green space. The dogs love it. They run up and down here, and if you're sitting on the first floor, you can see them whizzing by the windows, which is fun. But we also can open up this big garage door to the building and get fresh air. And in the summertime, a lot of times we'll have somebody grill out here and do kind of like a little company social event where we can spill out on the lawn and take advantage of that space. So that's what the building looks like. And
I can see why you miss your beautiful space, Jesse. That's
yeah, we're excited to get back there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking us on a tour. That's a fantastic way to have to do this in the virtual world. Thank you for that. It's awesome. So again, for David, one of our students is asking what educational level is needed to obtain this position. And you mentioned earlier that you really do prefer the college degree computer science. What kind of, just as we finish up, could high schoolers do to be preparing themselves? Do you offer any type of job shadows or high school level internships? Anything software you recommend they be starting to learn at home? What could they be doing now to start to prepare themselves for a successful career as a developer? If we were to do that, we can start with you, Jesse. Then if you have any ideas, Jory.
Yeah, so I guess one thing I would start with is just that every company is looking for something a little bit different. So we really care about four-year degrees. It's important to us, and so that's something we really prioritize. Other companies will feel differently. So look at the companies that you're most interested in and kind of work backwards from there is what I'd suggest. We do try to accommodate job shadows whenever we get requests. We tend to have pretty short ones, like a few hours. So we need to focus on getting our work done, and we want it to be a good experience for people. So it's usually not like days or weeks, but it doesn't hurt to ask. I think it's a really great idea to get kind of that inside look at a company's workspace, because you can say whatever you want on a website, but being able to see like what it feels like, how people are interacting, can be a really really great way to learn something about a company and just about like what the options are like out there. Our environment is pretty relaxed, pretty informal. In the summer, you'll see people wearing shorts and t-shirts. Other companies will be much more formal. Everyone will be wearing formal suits and ties and things like that. Some companies will be much more private, where everyone has an individual office or maybe even the dreaded cubes. So you can see a lot of different kinds of setups, and that can reflect something about the culture. Like part of the reason why we have an open workspace is because we really want people to have a lot of interaction. And so we don't want walls in between people. And you can sometimes pick up on things like that just by touring a space, and especially if you get to sit in a space for an hour or two and watch people work.
Yeah, that's very helpful. We got about 3 minutes left. So Jory, anything you would recommend for high school students to maybe be doing to prepare themselves in any way?
Yeah, no, I would definitely, kind of echo what Jesse said. And again, if you're interested in this, I think that I wish in high school I very much perceived computer science as this like field for like brilliant people, and I wish that I had known just a little bit more about it, and maybe, gotten some practice with it, just doing some, practice problems and, reading some things online. There's tons of like YouTube videos, that sort of thing. Because I think I would have realized sooner that, you don't have to be this like brilliant rocket scientist to do computer science. So
Yeah,
I think that if you're interested, just kind of maybe explore a little bit.
so it's a great suggestion, great takeaway for young people, just to get out there and explore and research and talk to people, hear from people like you guys today. This has been so great. I've learned a lot as a career developer. I'd love to continue to learn and be knowledgeable about people's career paths. So yeah, as our final tidbit for these young people, what kind of final word of wisdom as they're figuring out what they want to be when they grow up, or what kind of problem they want to solve? I like that question better anyway. Jesse, any final word of wisdom, and we'll end up with Jory.
Yeah, I'd say, really think about what motivates you, what energizes you, and what kind of things you want to be doing. And you'll probably be able to find a job and a company that matches that. If you're trying to fit yourself into some mold that isn't right for you, it's going to be a long career. So yeah, really think about what kind of problems you like and why you like them. Like sometimes the deeper underlying reason is more interesting and telling than maybe the very surface level. So do some introspection there, and then see what you can find to match.
That's great. Thank you. And Jory, and then I have just students hang on, because I have a couple of resources I want to share with you, but go ahead, Jory.
Yeah, I really, would agree with kind of what Jesse said a little bit earlier, just in terms of finding the culture of a company that you really value and can see yourself working at every single day. I think that I get a lot of really cool problems to work on. And, as Jesse said, kind of reflecting on what problems you might want to work on is important. But when I'm getting a bug that I have to work on that I don't really want to work on, it's the people that are really, keeping me here and keeping me really excited to work. And so I think that thinking about the kind of company culture that you might want to work at is also very important.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you so much. for that, you guys. It's been great to have you. I'm going to just show two resources that I think are great. Roadtripnation.com. Young people, if you want to hear some more people talk about their jobs and look at people's career paths, I love roadtripnation.com. Hover over a career exploration and then click interests. And, oh, I forgot to change the slide. There's all sorts of mentors in the computer science field. Tons of categories just to explore. It's a really fun website. So roadtripnation.com. And then also ONET Online is where you can also plug in something like computer software developer or even electrical engineer and start to compare and contrast the nuts and bolts of each of these careers as you research. This is just an example of when I put in software developer. And what I love about the software is it will tell you what kind of tasks they do on a normal day, what kind of tools they're used, you know, what kind of credentials, what kind of wages they earn, things about job openings. And I love this too, because this is what we talked about today. There's all sorts of different titles for work in this field. So again, you can continue to explore, especially as you start to look at colleges and what kind of programs they have. So just want to give you a heads up on that. Jesse Hill did give us his email if you have any questions, you guys, you can follow up with him. So Jesse Hill at atomicobject.com. And so if you haven't already, go to their website too and check things out. That's a great way to learn what's happening there. It's been great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, young people. Hope you're not too zoomed out. I know some of you have classes this afternoon with your online learning. It was really great to meet you, Jory and Jesse. Yeah. Have a good day now, everyone.
Thank you for having us.